You are the last major communist dictatorship in the world.
You mean I'm dictatorship?
Well, of course. A developmental dictatorship is what we believe it is. Am I wrong?
Of course. This is big mistake.
You are, it seems to me. A dictator, an authoritarian.
No, but I very frank speaking, I don't agree with your point. I'm dictator.
I know you don't. I know that you don't. But there's an old American phrase about if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and so forth, it's a duck.
What means dictatorship?
A dictator is somebody who forcibly, whether it's free press or free religion or free private enterprise, now you're beginning to come a little closer to that. You, Father knows best, and if you get in the way of Father, Father will take care of you.
你这个是天方夜谭。
Your way of describing what things are like in China is as absurd as what the Arabian Nights may sound like. The National People's Congress selects the Central Committee of the Communist Party, and the Central Committee has a Politburo, and the Politburo has a standing committee of which I am a member. And no decision is made unless all members agree.
But when we talk about dictatorship, I'm wagging my finger at the president of China. You know what? When I see the picture of that one young man in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, that to me means Chinese dictatorship. That's a wonderful symbol that hits me in my heart about dictatorship in China.
Don't need translation. I know what you say.
I'm very willing to answer these questions.
So we reminded him that he himself had been a student demonstrator more than 50 years ago. You were a student protester in Shanghai.
Shanghai, that's right.
At the time of the nationalists, we want freedom. We want democracy. That was you.
That's right.
That's what those people in Tiananmen Square were saying. We want freedom. We want democracy.
In
the 1989 disturbance, we truly understood the passion of students who were calling for greater democracy and freedom. In fact, we have always been working to improve our system of democracy. But we could not possibly allow people with ulterior motives to use the students to overthrow the government under the pretext of democracy and freedom.
Did a part of you admire his courage?
He was never arrested. I don't know where he is now. Looking at the picture, I know he definitely had his own ideas.
You haven't answered the question, Mr. President. Did a part of Jiang Zemin admire his courage?
I know what you are driving at, but what I want to emphasize is that we fully respect every citizen's right to freely express his wishes and desires. But I do not favor any flagrant opposition to government actions during an emergency. The tank stopped and did not run the young man down.
I'm not talking about the tank. I'm talking about that man's heart, that man's courage, that man, that lonely man, standing against that. 1 month after Tiananmen, you wrote a speech, and in it you said, corruption is growing in the soil. If all our party and our government organs use their power to seek material benefits, isn't this just like fleecing the people in broad daylight? Those students in Tiananmen had also been protesting against the corruption that you talked about. So apparently they did have some effect on you and on your party.
I hate corruption. You are right that during the 1989 disturbance, students were chanting slogans against corruption. So on this specific point, the party shares the same position as the students.
As an aside, and to underline his credentials as a student demonstrator in times past, the president himself sang a protest song that he'd used back in 1943 against Japanese troops who were occupying parts of China. The title, Arise, Fellow Students, to Defend the Motherland.
等候是天下的兴亡，听吧，满耳是大众的歌声，看吧，也年年国土的人生。
The president's aides suggested it would be unfair to show pictures of the violence at Tiananmen Square because they say Jiang Zemin had nothing to do with it. But they were glad to give us pictures of their embassy in Belgrade, which had been demolished by American bombers during NATO's air war last year. Mr. President, do you still believe that the United States bombed your embassy in Belgrade on purpose?
Let me put it the other way around. The United States has state-of-the-art technology. So all the explanations that they have given us for what they call a mistaken bombing are absolutely unconvincing.
What would the United States get out of bombing your embassy in Belgrade?
So is that for me also a question? 也是一个问题。
The identification marks of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade were too clear for people to miss. So why has there been such an incident? It is still a question. But we have decided to look forward to improve China-U.S. relations.
I understand that, and that's behind us. But, you know, it's possible for the CIA and the Pentagon to make mistakes. Stupid mistakes. The American people have no doubt in their mind, I think, that this was simply a mistake.
President Clinton apologized to me for the bombing many times on the telephone. I told him, since you represent Americans and I Chinese, it would be impossible for us to reach total agreement on this issue.
When 60 Minutes returns, the president will give us his views on Abraham Lincoln, American morals, and accused spy Dr. Wen-Ho Lee. President Jiang Zemin says his polls tell him the Chinese people believe that one-party rule is the best way to maintain stability and increase prosperity. And while the president is 74 and scheduled to step down in less than 3 years, he has indicated that he might stay on beyond that. His unfulfilled dream, of course, is to unite Taiwan with the mainland. And he told us that he would fly to Taiwan himself for unification talks if Taiwan were to agree in advance that it is part of China, which so far Taiwan has been unwilling to do. We asked the president about that Taiwan-born scientist who's become a source of some controversy in the United States and China. You know the name of Dr. Wen-Ho Lee? Do you know the man?
I know, famous scientist.
Famous scientist. Chinese.
Chinese? Overseas Chinese. Overseas Chinese.
Oh, overseas Chinese. He went to the United States in 1964 and had a wonderful career and went to Los Alamos National Laboratory, and suddenly they decided that he was a spy conceivably for you. Was he?
I can tell you frankly, China was not in any way involved in Wen-Ho Lee's case. But we do know that he is a scientist.
Who came here to China and talked to your scientists.
That's nothing strange. It's just as normal as some Chinese scientists traveling abroad. Allow me to quote a Chinese proverb which goes, if you are out to condemn someone, you can always trump up a charge. We don't know what political motives are behind it. Today, the Chinese still see Wen-Ho Lee as a renowned scientist.
That's all. So, not a spy.
Of course,
You seem almost defensive For the first time in this whole conversation, when I raised the name of Wenho Lee, all of a sudden I sensed this is a difficult subject for you.
No, and a difficulty to me. This is your feeling.
Correct.
Maybe under the lights.
Conceivably under the lights.
But what do you think?
I'm not
The
supposed to
scientist,
think.
even who is a spy, Chinese spy or not?
Do I think?
That's right. You will consider carefully.
I am considering very carefully. You've stopped me.
No. First time I discovered you faced the difficulty to answer this question.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I probably shouldn't answer. If there was ever a time to change the subject, this was it. You studied the speeches of Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln as a youngster? When you were learning English?
很小，我在中学的时候学。
When I was in middle school. And later, when I was a teacher, I used Lincoln's Gettysburg Address in my course. Do you want me to quote some lines from it?
I do indeed.
I will tell you, 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to a proposition that all men are created equal.
Why did you learn that by heart?
我就说为什么我
I
认真
focused
开
on the
始了
words,
这一段，
all
就是
men
因
are
为
created equal.
All men are created equal.
Right.
而且我认为林肯的
Because this had a great influence on students when I was young. And I think what Abraham Lincoln described still remains the goal of American leaders today.
It's true.
especially the last paragraph, the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, never pushed from those.
But Abraham Lincoln was elected by the people, correct?
That's right.
Why is it that Americans can elect their national leaders, but you apparently don't trust the Chinese people to elect your national leaders? Why?
我想告诉你
I am also an elected leader, though we have a different electoral system. Each country should have its own system because our countries have different cultures and historic traditions and different levels of education and economic development.
Zhang was chosen by the top leaders of the Communist Party. Public elections occur only in some villages and small towns, and candidates must either be members of the Communist Party or run as independents. But I don't understand still why you have a one-party state. What would happen? What would happen in China if there were 2 or 3 parties? Isn't it conceivable that, as in the United States, the competition between the parties to represent the majority of the people in that country make for a better country?
关于这样一个问题呢
Why must we have opposition parties? You're trying to apply the American values and the American political system to the whole world. But that is not very wise.
Many China scholars believe the president has in effect made a deal with the Chinese people to increase their economic and social freedom to work and live as they please, and in return the people give up any right to challenge the authority of the Communist Party. But the president doesn't see it that way. He told us the people and the party are working together toward mutual goals.
这一点我想很坦率地讲
Let me be frank.
所以我们双
China and the United States differ greatly in terms of our values. You Americans always use your values in making judgments about the political situation in other countries.
用你
We want to learn from the West about science and technology and how to manage the economy. But this must be combined with specific conditions here. That's how we have made great progress in the last 20 years.
Fact is, China's standard of living has been rising dramatically. And in China, like America, it's the economy that largely determines people's satisfaction with their government. The president maintains that the vast majority here believes strong one-party rule is the best way to hold this huge population together and to keep the economy growing. So stability is the top priority, sometimes at the expense of human rights. New subject, one you're not going to want to talk about. Human rights. You persecute something called Falun Gong. They do exercises, they believe in a certain spiritual life. What is it that worries you so about Falun Gong that you torture, arrest, kill, etc.? What is it?
I will tell you. Their leader, Li Hongzhi, claims to be the reincarnation of the chief Buddha, and also a reincarnated Jesus Christ. Can you believe that? He said that doomsday was about to come and that the earth was going to explode. In fact, what he says are just fallacies to deceive people. But as a result of his preaching, many families were broken and many lives were lost. So, after careful deliberations, we concluded that Falun Gong is an evil cult.
A cult.
Cult.
By the way, no Falun Gong followers have ever been sentenced to death.
But 26 of them have reportedly died in police custody. President Zhang told us Falun Gong has driven thousands of its members to commit suicide. But Falun Gong says that's ridiculous, that it does not encourage suicide, and that it's still going strong despite the Chinese government's efforts to quash it. Look, you have persecuted Christians. It's well known. You have persecuted Falun Gong. It is difficult to understand why a big power like China would want to persecute people because of their religion.
One thing we have to make very clear. Just now, you mixed up two things, Christianity and Falun Gong. Under China's constitution, people have the freedom of religious belief. But Falun Gong is a cult. It is totally different from Christianity.
But you will acknowledge then that Christians have been persecuted by the Communist Party in China, yes? No.
No.
But like anyone else, Christians should not break Chinese laws.
The government does recognize Christianity Chinese style. But foreign missionaries are banned and evangelical groups are not allowed to spread their faith without government approval. As for freedom of speech, criticism of the government can get you arrested. And Jiang Zemin has always favored tough government controls of the press. The press, he has said, should be a mouthpiece of the party. And there is not freedom of the press here. There is not. We see a connection between freedom of the people and freedom of the press. What do you fear from a free press?
I think all countries and parties must have their own publications to publicize their ideas. We do have freedom of the press, but such freedom should be subordinate to and serve the interest of the nation. How can you allow such freedom to damage the national interests?
You have blocked internet sites here in China, the BBC, the Washington Post. Why? Why block an internet site? You don't trust the people somehow to be able to pick stuff up off the internet and learn?
We hope people will learn a lot of useful things from the internet. However, sometimes there is also unhealthy material, especially pornography on the internet, which does great harm to our youngsters.
Not from the BBC and not from the Washington Post.
They might be banned because of some of their political news reports. We need to be selective. We hope to restrict as much as possible information not conducive to China's development.
Deng Xiaoping said, to get rich is glorious. Is it conceivable that the more material gains that we make as human beings, the more we become hedonists, permissive?
What Deng Xiaoping advocated does allow some people to become rich before others. But the ultimate objective is prosperity for all. A common problem for world leaders is to avoid material wealth on one hand, but moral decline on the other.
Do you think that America is more decadent, for instance, than China, and that we are exporting our decadence to you?
Let me put it this way. due to many differences between our countries in historical traditions, ways of life, religious beliefs, etc. Things you don't regard as decadent in the States, we may regard as decadent in China. That's why we have to be very selective.
So that this is a very complicated problem.
Another complicated problem is trade. And President Zhang will meet with American business leaders this week to urge them to increase their investments in China. Corporate America has long lusted after customers in China's billion buyer market. But the fact is China still sells a lot more to us than we sell to them. To change that, the White House says that if the U.S. Senate approves permanent, normal trade relations with China, as the House already has, that would force China to reduce tariffs and trade barriers, and thus to buy more American goods. President Zhang wants normal trade relations too. And he wanted to end our conversation by underscoring why he had agreed to this rarest of interviews.
I'm convinced that this interview will be further promoting the friendship and the mutual understanding between our two peoples. That is all.
You believe that?
That's right. I'm convinced that. I trust that.
You admire America.
That's right.
And you want to be friends.
I want to promote the mutual understanding between two peoples.